Hello and welcome to the Bout of Insanity podcast. This will be the second episode. Last week I uploaded my first episode, which I am quite happy with. It did relatively well, especially for a first attempt of something, and I plan to do this at least once every week. So on the agenda today, although last week was quite unmercifully politics related, and not just politics related but very boring politics, I will say, but for some reason it just kept me talking and going on and on and on about it. But anyway, today will be different, but I can't guarantee that it won't be boring. So anyway, today I will be talking about some paranormal sort of stuff. Not any of my encounters, because I have hardly any, and I am going to a lot more detail these coming weeks about it. So, paranormal encounters, or supposed encounters and events, will be on the topic today. Now let me just check what else would be. I've already forgotten. Oh yes, and some other historical and some political stuff. So I think I best start with the most obvious news of these past few days for UK politics, and that is the resignation of Matt Hancock. I will say that it's been a long time coming. His character is a bit suspect for a world crisis, and the worst shape the United Kingdom has been in for at least the past few decades. So it's to be expected. But what finally bumped him off was an affair between him and some other woman, and he's been married for 20 or so years. So yeah, a bit awkward for him, especially when it's being presented over national television and news networks. So am I disappointed? I don't think disappointed's the word, because I'm not entirely surprised, but I'm not sad. I mean, for all the government's faults and supposed faults, and what's supposedly their fault and what supposedly isn't, Matt Hancock was a liability, but I think Boris didn't sack him because he doesn't want the Conservative Party to seem some flim-flam dodging around in a crisis. So I think he was kind of artificially putting hope in Matt Hancock just so they seem politically stable. Because although it didn't happen with this, they got Sajid David. Is that how you say it? 1 second. Yes, Sajid Javid. I'm not very good with pronunciation. But he was sworn in with, a few hours, maybe a day later, so not much political conspiracy and crisis to be met with it. But I mean, the public are definitely on the side or against Matt Hancock. They were at least a bit like, oh well, he's not ideal. He was never ideal in the best of times, let's be honest, and now that's just tipped it over the edge. So, from being allegedly called effing useless, or totally useless, by Boris Johnson over a WhatsApp message to Dominic Cummings, to him finally resigning and having an affair exposed, hasn't been a good month for Matt Hancock. It's a bit ironic that as soon as we maybe come into a close with a pandemic, Matt Hancock has been in a worse shape than ever. So that's it, really. I don't want to spend too much time on Matt Hancock or politics in general, because I've promised at the beginning that it won't be. But I suppose I can give my opinions, my bad opinions, on sort of current political events in general. Now, with this government, they made mistakes, and they made blunders and mishaps and everything else, especially in education, because we were told, oh, there definitely will be exams this year. Then look, there weren't any. So we spent, I think, half a year studying exam questions and exam techniques to death, only to be told, no, there's no exams. For as much as I hate the SNP, I think they did the right thing at the start and said, yeah, there's no exams this year, no matter what we do with lockdown. And I think that was something to be admired. But are the government really totally useless with everything which is going on? I don't think so, to be honest. Because not everything is their fault. You can't predict when a virus will mutate. You can't predict how many vaccines you're going to roll out and how many are going to fall short, which, by the way, the UK is, I believe, the top vaccinator in Europe, and the rest of Europe is shadowed by the European Medical Agency. So that is definitely a success for Brexit. Even most Remainers say it is. So, but even then, in 2016 were people going on about how, oh, if there's a worldwide pandemic, the EU will stop our vaccine rollout. No, they weren't. They were talking about immigration, which is sort of linked to the EU's power over us. So I wouldn't go as far as Nigel Farage and say that we want a democracy with the EU, or call or liken the EU to the Soviet Union, because that's just not only completely wrong, but quite offensive to the people who actually lived through the Soviet Union. I wouldn't go that far, but national sovereignty is a very important thing for me, and I think we see the EU's real colours over these past few months, trying to sabotage the UK, and even offering to put a hard border between the Republic and Northern Ireland. That's just totally ignorant, and it shows how little respect they have. Or they're not doing it on purpose, obviously. They don't want to start the troubles again, but you know, it just shows how they don't really understand what countries do, like when trying to make Poland very socially liberal, where they are very Catholic and very Christian, which I'm not getting into whether that's good or bad, or rights of minorities or anything like that today. And when people say, oh, the EU provides economic stability, well, look at Greece. Do they have economic stability? The euro is. I think economists predict that the EU will, or the euro will implode at some point. I mean, obviously every currency falls and rises in value, but the euro compared to the pound is at least worse off. So, is the EU a dictatorship of a few EU bureaucrats? No. But is it totally democratic and have a total respect for all its citizens and all its nation states? No. And I think that's why we left. Because although people were saying at the time that it's to control our own borders and to get some immigrants out and that's it, there's no other talking points, and then people thought it would just go back to normal after like a few weeks of negotiation. That's not entirely the point of Brexit, but it's linked to it, because why couldn't we decide our own borders? Why couldn't we decide to deport a load of people or refuse people? Why did we have to? And it's because of the EU trying to put their laws, their EU directives onto us, and no matter what our parliament said or what anybody thought, it's going to happen whether you like it or not. I think you can probably guess my stance on Brexit now. And anyway, I said I wouldn't get into politics. I have spent 14 minutes on this, so I think it's time to advance this. So, now for some more accessible and more, well, I wouldn't say exciting, because it's not really putting people on the edges of their seat, but more entertaining subjects, paranormal activity and supposed paranormal and magic and all of that. Now, as some people would know listening, that Henry VII ascended the throne through conquest. He fought and won against Richard III at the Battle of Bosworth Field in 1485. Now, this wasn't very unusual for the time. I mean, not the Hundredth Year War, the War of the Roses had been waging for, I think, decades, and a lot of dynastic problems. But what made some Yorkists turn against Richard III was his supposed killing of the two princes in the Tower. Let me just look up their names, because I always forget them, even though I'm supposed to be good with history. I can't for the life of me remember. I know one of them is Richard of York, I think. So yes, I've looked it up, and it was Edward V and Richard the Duke of York. So I was right. So they would obviously be the next in line to the line of succession. I mean, King Edward V, he was 12. I mean, he was and still is considered king because he was. But then one day they just poof, disappeared into the Tower of London, and a lot of people suspected Richard III, who was sort of, I suppose it's like later with Edward Seymour, not the King Edward, or King Edward VI, sorry, but Edward Seymour, his uncle, who was our Lord Protector, and he pretty much enacted as king in himself. So a figure like that, I mean, except he was actually in the line of succession, so people think he killed those two princes. There's no concrete evidence that he did, but it's thought that he did, so he could become king, and that enraged a lot of people, even Yorkists. Richard III himself was a Yorkist against the Lancastrians. So Henry VII came over from exile in Brittany. He had a very weak claim to the throne. I'm talking very weak. It's something like although he was a descendant of, I think, Edward III, I think, don't quote me on any of this, it's been a while since I've looked at this, but he was related to Edward III or some other great English king, but the line of which he came down was disgraced and was taken out of a line of succession. Thankfully, people forgot that. So yeah, he had very little claim to the throne. I mean, John de la Pole and Edmund de la Pole had just as much, if not more, claim to the throne, and they would be a constant annoyance for Henry over the years. I think they both got killed over his reign. So, and Henry VII really was quite merciful. If you look at Lambert Simnel, who was a pretender to the throne, actually saying that he was Edward V, or was he Richard of York? Anyway, I can't remember, but a pretender to the throne, and a lot of people believed him. At the Battle of Stoke, the rebel army was destroyed by the professional royal army, but Edmund de la Pole was killed there. Actually, no, that's not why I brought up Lambert Simnel. I brought it up because Henry VII showed mercy towards Lambert Simnel, and it's because he was a child, but I mean, look at Henry VIII, who would execute people for pretty questionable reasons, especially Elizabeth Woodsville and Anne Boleyn. I mean, most of it was just made up, and he wanted to get rid of her, but Henry VII was quite merciful, because although he clamped down on the nobles' power, both financially and militarily and all of that, he wasn't a tyrant compared to other people, which is strange because the people of England saw him as a tyrant. But anyway, I'm getting off topic. Why am I talking about Henry VII when I'm supposed to be talking about something completely different? So I do apologise. I always do this, and I will try not to in the future. But not Henry VII. Oh, I cannot help myself, can I? So Richard III lay dying somewhere before the battle, because he must have been killed during the battle. But Elizabeth of York, who would be Henry VII's future wife, they actually did love each other, she supposedly cursed the killers of the two princes. So people would say, well, if there is such thing as the curse, she obviously cursed Richard III. But again, it's not proven that he actually killed them. Some people think that Henry VII killed them, and that will be very influential in a second, because the curse was that the killer's family would only be able to give birth to daughters. Now, maybe the curse isn't very strong, or maybe it has loopholes, I don't know, because clearly Henry VII had sons. He had Arthur and Henry. But then you can say, well, Arthur died when he was a small boy, and Henry VIII, he had infamously daughters and one son. I don't know, can we really trust a faulty curse on criminal investigations and looking into who killed the princes? I don't think so, especially with the loopholes where both Henry VII and Henry VIII both had male heirs. But then people will say, well, Edward VI, he died young. He died at 15. But again, he died of what people think was tuberculosis or some other chest or lung disease. What's the chance that... I mean, it went from, the killers will only be able to have daughters, to, well, he can have a son, but sometimes they die. Sometimes they don't die young, like Henry VIII. Then it's, well, he might have a son, but he will die 15 years later. I mean, not a very reliable curse, is it? Now, I mean, you can say, well, Mary Tudor, Mary the First of England, she didn't have any heirs, and she had loads of pregnancies, and actually so did Catherine of Aragon. She had a lot of miscarriages, and Mary the First, or Princess Mary, was the only living child she could birth. So it's a bit interesting, but you know, it's a missing prince in the tower. It's a mystery. And then also the Tudors are most famous. It's obviously been played as sort of a creepy tale and weird coincidences and just a weird tale. So I think it has, now this will very, very, very much shock you, I think it has little historical value. I don't think Elizabeth Plantagenet of York actually inadvertently cursed her own family. And let's not forget that most evidence would point towards Richard III of York, although some historians actually believe Henry VII killed the two princes. We most likely will never know. Because although some skeletons of some children were found in the Tower of London quite recently, for some reason or another, they weren't allowed to have a DNA construction of it to actually prove that they were Edward V and Richard of York. And I don't know, maybe some magic of archaeology would tell us nearabouts the exact date they died. I don't know, I'm not an archaeologist. Although I wanted to be one at some point, but I don't think I'd like it. Anyway, I think the next subject, it's again, this has only been a short episode, about 28 minutes so far, so other paranormal, quote, paranormal experiences, I'll go with that one first. Before people had credited science and psychology which actually worked, it wasn't, oh, you're born in this month, therefore you will be like this. Though people do still believe that, some people do, but people no longer go, oh, you have a very bad headache when the moon is a full moon, go sit under an oak tree and drink some milk. Like that. They're no longer like that. It's not Middle Ages. For a long time, I'm not sure how common it is, because I don't know, it seems like loads of people have them all the time, but sleep paralysis, where people would wake up in the middle of the night and they can't move, and they often feel like someone's watching them, or they think they see something in the corner of the room. Before we had science about it, and we are still learning about it, I think, that obviously scientists and psychologists, everyone like that, they don't know everything about sleep paralysis, but imagine it's the mid-1480s and you wake up and you think you see someone standing over you. You are gonna think, that's either the devil or it's a ghost who has a very malevolent ghost, or malicious ghost trying to kill me. They're not gonna think, oh, that's me waking up with paralysis from like tiredness or dehydration or whatever causes it. They're not going to say that. They're going to think this is a working of the devil. Now, on the sort of subject of the devil, I can't, for some reason, I can't find any information on this, but in Peak Cavern, it goes by another name, which is very hilarious, but I'm not going to say it. You can search it for yourself and then let out a hearty laugh. But I went there. It's something like the largest cave entrance in the UK, and they do tours there. I did it like last year or something. So you go down and there's a place called like the Devil's Staircase, because there's a story that in, I think, the 1500s there was some murderer and thief. I can't remember his name and I can't find anything on the internet. He actually hosted a party in the cave. There's a sort of like a long rock, which they call the table, I think. That's obviously where they sat and ate, and he actually invited the devil to dine with him. And then supposedly all of the guests, who are all like criminals and everything like that, they saw the devil descend from the staircase. Now, it wasn't a real staircase, obviously, just like some sloping rocks up into a chamber above. But supposedly the devil came down and he accepted the request, and in thanks for letting him dine with him and have a jolly old party, he would gift the criminal with immortality. Now, about a month later, that criminal was hanged for like pickpocketing or something along those lines. So obviously, if the devil did come down and gave him immortality, maybe the devil isn't really that strong. Actually, what if he did it on purpose? He made, I think it's something like Laurel or something like that as his first name. So Laurel goes, I'm immortal now, and he tries his luck, and then he gets caught and sent to hell. Maybe it was all a plan by the devil. Maybe. I mean, it's something he'd do if he exists. And how apparently when Jesus was like fasting in the desert and the devil appeared and said, well, you're the Son of God, why don't you turn those rocks to bread and then you won't starve? And Jesus says something like, God's word is the only truth, or something like that, something Jesus would say. But if you think about it, I get it's the temptation of Christ, and it's supposed to be the devil trying to trick Jesus or whatever, but he does make a lot of sense, where Jesus was alone in the desert, probably already half dead, and the devil appears and tries to tempt him to feed himself. I mean, realistically, why shouldn't he? But I don't know, I'm not Christian, I haven't read the Bible, I don't know anything about it. But why is the devil arguably so much more believable than the Christian God, or some other gods which also have the devil in its religion? I'm not sure if Islam does. I don't think Islam does, but I think Judaism also has the devil. But why is the devil so believable for some people? Because you get these so-called Satanists who are just quirky atheists. Like, people saying, Satanism has nothing to do with worshipping the devil, it just means you don't believe in God. Like, that's just atheism, and you want to sound edgy by saying, I'm a Satanist. And realistically, how are people going to be Satanists? Because surely, if you know, or think you know, Satan exists, you'd be a Christian. If you saw the devil, you would not worship him. I don't know, maybe the devil goes, well, I'll let you live forever if you worship me. But there's no immortal Satanists out there, hopefully. Hopefully not, anyway. How? What? If you saw a man with hooves for feet walking around your house, trying to tempt you and showing off magic and giving you a wish, like, maybe you go, well, I can manipulate this wish and make me very powerful and very over these other people. I'll get that, because the devil is quite infamously really good at manipulating people and tricking them into doing stuff and give their lives or sell their soul. But realistically, do many Satanists see Satan on a regular basis? No. And if they did, they'll drop the Necronomicon and they'll rush to church, get some bloody holy water and start doing that cross sign on their body, and they will pray every day that they don't need to see the devil anymore. So do I actually think Satanism is a real religion? No. It's just quirky people trying to offend Christians, which mostly it works. To be fair to them, it does annoy a lot of Christians. And that's another thing, actually, because although I think Satanism isn't a real religion, because I think you can't truly believe in it, people saying paganism is Satanism is just wrong. I mean, like some Christians going over to some pagan dance or whatever, or a druid's dance or worship, and go, "You're going to hell, man, you're worshipping the devil." then they're like, well, no, we don't have a devil. The devil belongs to Christianity. So, really, Christians believe in the devil and most pagans don't. So how are you going to say paganism is Satanism? With the devil, it's all a bit confusing and a touchy area for most people, because what turns a lot of people to Christianity is the fear of hell. Couldn't be me. I'm joking, I'm not Christian. I'm not a raving lunatic either. Actually, the podcast is called Bout of Insanity, so maybe I am. 40 minutes! Have I been talking about the devil for what? 22 minutes? Oh, Jesus Christ. I need to sort myself out. But what was it? Oh yeah, why are demons much more believable than angels? Because if someone goes, I see demons, and they tell me to do stuff, among the paranormal folk, they go, that's really worrying, do not do anything they say. But if they go, I saw some angels, I'm just waiting for these angels, and they're going to tell me what to do, and I'm going to follow suit. Most people nowadays will just go, yeah, stay away from him. He's a bloody nutter. He thinks people with wings and dove wings are going to appear and save people. But if that same guy goes, well, a demon told me to do it, and it was a form of an old lady, and convinced me she was really nice, and then told me to do something, most people again would say he's a nutter. But paranormal people who would earlier go dismiss it as some religious freak would go, hang on a minute, we need an interview with you, we need to do this. And again, with Satanists, like, if Satanists really believed in the devil and demons and all of that, they wouldn't do bloody what's it called, Ouija board. They wouldn't do that, because if you believe there's someone who was kicked out of heaven for being evil and trying to overthrow God and punishes people for all eternity, the chances are you're probably not going to want him in your front room. So, here's a pro tip, don't try and summon the devil in your house for some fun, because what if he's real? He's probably not, but if you believe that he is, and if you believe that bloody ghosts and demons are real and they haunt this world, probably not wise to say, yeah, I'm going to try and get one to kill me. It's different if you're a non-believer, which is probably the more sane option. And there's a difference between, oh, I want to see if ghosts are real, I'm going to go to this old house and say, can you turn this light off? Or getting some rumour that, oh, here's a demon which scratches people, and then going, if you don't like us, turn that light off, and then it turns off. I may be referencing BuzzFeed Unsolved here, but yeah, why do people risk it? If they themselves believe that something bad will happen, and there's this evil lord who rules over hell, you probably don't want to go to hell. But I'm just saying. So most of it is just quirky atheists trying to annoy people and want an excuse to wear a pentagram necklace and black clothing. That's what I think Satanism is, just a load of teenagers with Catholic parents or Christian parents. That's what I think it is. 45 minutes long. Should I continue? I've only done, what, two topics. I've done Matt Hancock, and I've done paranormal stuff and curses and all of that. Yeah, I think I'll call it here. I'll call the end here. So, what I forgot to say last episode is that if any viewer has any suggestions for me to talk about, you can either comment it on this video, or you could email me at boutofin@gmail.com. I will say that again, boutofin@gmail.com. So if you have any suggestions on what we should talk about, you can email me there. So I thank you for sticking out for so long and listening to me ramble on about stuff which comes into my mind spontaneously. It must be a torture. So thank you for listening. This has been the Bout of Insanity podcast, and goodbye.